Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished and senior professional from Minnesota, USA, Mr. Thomas Knoll. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Thank you.
excited.
Thomas is the Chief Executive Officer of 11, which is an organization that helps you communicate the thoughts and feelings you really want to talk about. But later, he's an executive coach with yoursecondcall.com. So, Thomas, my first question for you, you had a very diverse career as a 6X founder, a startup employee, and an executive coach. What inspired you to take this path?
I don't know if it was inspired.
Okay. Okay.
The I accidentally became an entrepreneur
Mhm.
because there were some things that I wanted to be able to use that I couldn't find,
Mhm.
and I didn't know how hard it was going to be
Mhm.
to go make them
Mhm. Mhm.
yet. And so I just went out and tried to make them
Right.
and then learned how
Amazing.
difficult it was
Amazing.
to build a business and make it work. And during the process of trying to build companies and trying to make them work, um, ended up having two exits, but a lot of other failures,
Mm.
and did a lot of mentor calls to other founders during that time,
Mm.
um, and just learned that or discovered that like that was actually I enjoyed that a lot more than even trying
Mm.
to build my own companies.
Mm.
And so after I sold the second one, moved into
Fascinating.
executive coaching.
Fascinating. And Thomas, what were some of the lessons you learned from your two exits? And how did they
uh,
shape your approach to future ventures?
yeah. I didn't learn hardly anything from the exits
Hmm.
compared to the failures. Um, what I did learn
Mm.
is the second part of your question. Um, how it shaped the future stuff
Mm.
was realizing how expensive opportunity cost
Mm.
is.
Mm.
And so every minute spent trying to push a boulder up a hill is not only wasted trying to push a boulder up a hill, but it's also energy and time that could be going to the next thing.
Mm.
And so beginning to look at stuff not like I need to figure out how to make this work,
Mm.
but instead um, more quickly getting to the point of noticing that this isn't going to work, so we could do the next thing instead.
Mm. Well said. When I was reading about you, I was also fascinated to learn and read about Ikigai, which is a part of your life. And therefore,
Yeah,
my question is, how has your personal Ikigai evolved over the years, and how does it drive your current work?
yeah. Um, I mean, I almost like now that I have the current one, the past ones feel almost like lost memories.
Hmm.
You know, it's like I'm sure I said I wanted to be an astronaut
Yeah.
someday. I'm sure I said I wanted
Mm.
to, be a fireman someday or, but I don't even connect with those anymore. And that's how I feel about some of the other past versions.
Hmm.
Um, and that's part of the beauty of it is how clarifying it is when you have the current one. The Ikigai is like these four circles
Yeah.
that all overlap, and you have what am I good at, what do I love doing, what do people need, and what will people pay for. Um, and it's like if you can land right there in that one middle spot where like the
Mhm.
thing you love also can sustain you doing
Yeah.
the thing that you love.
Mm.
And so like now what it is I want to increase the quality and quantity of curiosity
Mm.
in the world. because I believe it is so easy to teach and measure and train
Mm.
and push on curiosity.
Mhm.
And the natural side effect of that is empathy and compassion, right?
Mm.
Like it's very difficult not to feel empathy or compassion for someone when you're actively being curious about them.
Mm.
And so, but if you push on curiosity or if you push on empathy or compassion directly,
Mm.
you can't measure that.
Yeah.
You can't really teach it. If you try to force it, it kind of falls apart.
Mm.
So that's what it is now, and it shapes everything that I'm spending my time on, from the app to the coaching to my own just trying to learn how to be a better
Yeah.
parent and husband and friend.
Yeah.
It touches on everything.
Well said. Well said. My next question, Thomas, is and you talk about leadership and you're a coach. What is healing leadership? And how did you develop this concept?
Yeah. Um, so when I think of self healing,
Hmm.
that part of it,
Mm.
um, I remember someone telling me about this idea that like a doctor can um, provide a diagnosis, right? They can kind of figure out what is wrong and tell you what is wrong.
Yeah.
They could provide some medicine or some therapies to help um, repair the brokenness or the thing that isn't quite working
Hmm.
correctly. They could do a surgery. They
Yeah.
can medicine can like help with the pain or try to help with the infection or these things. Um, but no matter what, at the end of all of those scenarios, it is the body itself that heals. Um, and when we extrapolate that to um, organisms, ecosystems, organizations, businesses, I think that a lot of the same concepts apply. That
Mm.
like we can diagnose and say what we think is wrong. Someone can tell us like, here's what you should do to change it.
Mm.
But end of the day, a healthy organization, a resilient organization,
Mm.
is going to be comprised of healthy and resilient individuals who find a way
Mm.
to do that self healing.
Fascinating.
Um, and so the leadership piece of this is
Yeah.
like, and that's how we guide it through that process of,
Correct.
instead of dictating what should happen or
Mm.
trying to control the parts of the system, if we're able to lead the system together through a healing process,
Mm.
then it gets stronger and more resilient and can live through more cycles
Mm.
um,
Mm.
than if they don't heal.
Amazing. You also talk about one-on-one meetings. How
Yeah.
do these fit into self-healing leadership? And what makes these one-on-one meetings so powerful?
Yeah. It's a little hyperbolic, but I go as far to say that, I believe the one-on-one is the single highest leverage, most valuable meeting that can ever happen inside of any organization.
Mm.
Um, and it's not even just because of the content itself, right? There's so many ways to share information or ask questions um, that aren't they don't require a one-on-one.
Mm. Mm.
But a one-on-one is an opportunity for two people to increase their connection, their level of trust, um, to better understand themselves kind of
Mm.
in the mirror of another person, and to learn from someone else's experience, background, history, insights, right? And so if we really open up to um, each person in the organization having stronger one-on-one
Mm.
relationships, where it's safe to ask questions, where it's safe to get feedback, where it's safe to share ideas that might not be ready for a larger group yet. That is the opportunity to really strengthen all of those bonds,
mm,
and increase the ability to heal, right? Because we're pre- we're prepared for difficult conversations. We're
mm,
prepared for feedback. We're prepared to um, take what we learned in a closer relationship now and extend that a little bit further across the org. Um, it strengthens us for that.
mm. Great response. You also talk about reintegration in leadership. What does this mean and why is it important?
What is what is a I don't even know if I have a good short answer for that one. Um, yeah, I can't even
Not to worry. Let's take another
debrief on
question. Let's
that.
take another question. What role
Okay.
does mindfulness or emotional intelligence play in leadership?
Yeah, I think we've often turned those into kind of spiritual words, or kind of like um they're kind of like candy.
Hmm.
They're fun to like just like either indulge in or like kind of gorge on. um and I think they are actually the simplest. They're exactly what they say they are, right? Like being mindful is not this thing you go do, or like this three-step habit that you should build into,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it is like you either are or you aren't
Hmm.
at any given moment,
Hmm.
right? And you can be further or closer to that.
Hmm.
The opportunity that exists is for us to be able to just check at any given point.
Hmm.
Like, am I reacting? Am I just starting a playbook that I've learned? When someone just questioned one of my ideas,
Hmm.
right? And I just start playing this defensive playbook
Hmm.
where I get upset and I get angry and I get louder and I dig in and I care less and less and less what they're saying,
Yeah.
and more about like getting my point across,
Hmm.
right? And so that is a moment where if there's a chance to check, like, whoa, what is going on in here right now?
Hmm.
Um, and the funnest thing to me is, and this sounds so scary to most
Hmm.
people,
Hmm.
but what I found is you can even tell the other people what is happening, and it's even more effective than trying to hide it,
Hmm.
right? So like I can actually pause and go like, wow, I'm feeling really defensive
Hmm.
from that question, and I don't really know why. Like it's a great question.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm noticing I'm feeling really defensive. So this must be really important to me.
Hmm.
Um, will you give me a minute to just kind of like think about your question instead of like reacting to it,
Hmm.
right? And what's wild is that sounds like the craziest, scariest thing to do out loud,
Hmm.
but it actually is the most helpful thing to the whole
Absolutely.
group. Not only because it gets us somewhere,
Hmm.
but also like as a leader, that demonstrates that, hey, it's okay to pause. It's okay to tell each other what's happening
Correct.
in these conversations,
Absolutely.
and maybe all of our conversations will be better if
Yeah.
we do.
Absolutely. Great response. Thomas, how can leaders unburden themselves from past failures, self doubts, or limiting beliefs?
Yeah. This one should be huge, but to me, this is a simple one.
Hmm.
Um,
That's why people come to you for, as a coach.
yeah, it's like again, like just take the word at what it is, like unburden,
Hmm.
right? Like set down,
Hmm.
like notice it's there, right? To be able to set it down. The the magic. to that process, um, that is simple. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but it is a very simple thing to do, which is to notice that it's there, right? Like I can't
Yeah,
take something off if I don't even notice that I'm carrying it around,
correct.
right? And so that's a simple thing to do, but a
Mm,
difficult thing to start to notice that I'm
mm,
carrying this. And when I notice that I'm carrying it, most of us, most of the time, as soon as we notice that, we try to stuff it down,
mm,
ignore it, dismiss it, um, belittle it, um, kick it down the road. I'll deal with that
mm,
later, right? Um, when instead, if we uh, get curious about
mhm,
this thing that we've noticed
mm,
and try to find out why we're carrying it,
mm,
um, we usually find beliefs, and we usually find something that is trying to help.
mm,
Like like with the defensiveness example from before, right? Like when you kind of like get down to the heart of that, notice why it's there and what it's doing,
mm,
and you find this, or I don't know what you find. What I found
mm.
was this kid that remembers being dismissed and like told not to
Yeah.
speak unless spoken to, and what makes you think you're qualified
Mm,
to, and it remembers those things, and it's like I'm not going to let that happen to us ever again.
mm,
We're going to dig in. We're going to stand firm. We're going to make sure that we're heard. We're going
mm,
to have a voice and not be right.
mm,
Um, so there's this thing that was really trying to be helpful for good reasons,
mm,
that now is kind of like, I don't know, spilling the paint everywhere. Just like it's overextending, what it's trying to do. Um, and so noticing
mm,
that it's there, noticing like why it's there and why it's trying to help, then it becomes um, uh, simple, not easy, but it becomes simple to go, oh, I can set this down, or I can have it relax.
mm,
This conversation doesn't need that level of, like our self-worth is not at risk this time. So I can set that down, I can unburden
mm,
that piece, that
mm.
lets the conversation continue.
Very interesting. And a related question for you, failures and self-doubt, of course, but a lot of individuals or leaders struggle with an imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
How can they navigate it and build authentic confidence?
Yeah. The I think the first thing I'll say is most of us think that something like confidence is a thing that is added, right? We think of it as like, if I could add more confidence, then I would respond in this way that like I want to be responding, or I would do things that I want to do, right? And I believe things like confidence are not additive. You don't add more confidence. Um, Rather, they are what remains when this other stuff is released, right? So if I feel like I'm not confident
Mhm.
in this situation, it is more likely that I have fear of failure,
Mm.
fear of looking stupid,
Yeah.
fear of doing the wrong thing, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of actually I am
Mm.
wrong. What if the other person, right? Like all of that stuff is why it feels no confidence.
Mm.
And if I notice those, and I'm able to release the stuff in the way,
Mm.
what remains is this thing that we all go like, oh, what a confident person. They
Mm.
have so much confidence. But what we're describing is a lighter person who's not carrying a lot of fear, a lot of worries, a lot of anxiety about the right. Like they've noticed those. They said like, "Hey, we're okay," and now they can do the thing that they wanted to do, say the thing that they wanted to say,
Mm,
and that is what looks like confidence.
mm.
But it is this like what remains when the other
Yeah.
stuff is not in the way.
Mm.
And there's other things like um, like creativity is very similar, right? Like you don't add on a whole bunch of
Yeah.
creativity. Like when you set aside the stuff that's in the way of it,
Mm,
like wow, what a creative person.
mm,
They just like express their ideas without blocking them or holding them back
mm,
or resisting following it or worrying about what people will think or
mm.
right like so those are the kinds of things that just remain, so they're actually very easy to use, and you don't have you don't need this like book of
Yeah.
47 ways to get more confident.
Absolutely.
You just need to notice and let go of the things that
Mm.
are interfering with the confidence.
Correct. Correct. Thomas, I have time for two more questions. My next question is, what is the role of vulnerability in leadership? And how can
Yeah.
leaders cultivate being vulnerable without feeling exposed?
Yeah. um I don't know if you can.
Mhm.
So I want to make it easier for people to try it. Because if they're waiting to not feel vulnerable to try it, then whatever it is that you do next wasn't actually a vulnerable thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so I don't want to present that it's even possible
Hmm.
to explore it and express it
Hmm.
without feeling
Hmm.
the 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 sense of being vulnerable.
Hmm.
What I do invite people to do um, is, there's this thing that like top performers, whatever that means, they all talk about visualization as like a key to their success. Like they will sit there and visualize an entire race, an entire game, an entire meet, an entire performance over and over again without even doing it. They just visualize it because the way our brains are wired, it's very hard for our brain to know the difference between the visualization or the actual experience.
Hmm.
So very similarly, the question I use most often is I'm not telling you to go do this, right? Like if someone says like, um, I really need to ask this person why uh, their performance has like taken a dive in the last 3 months, and I like them, I really want them to stay. But if we don't figure this out, like I don't know how they get to stay, but I'm afraid to ask them because what if that like hurts their feelings or offends them, or maybe they say I don't even want to be here, and I don't know if I
Hmm.
don't want to hear that, right?
Hmm.
So if that's how they're feeling and they're like, it would be vulnerable to go do that, right? The question is, I'm not telling you to go do this after this call.
Hmm.
I'm just asking, can you explain to me what you believe will happen if you just tell that person
Hmm.
exactly the same thing you just told me? I'm afraid, I want to know this, but I think that all of these things are what could happen,
Hmm.
and I just wanted you to know that you blah blah blah, right? Like, and then what? What do you think happens?
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? And then they can go like, well, I think that they're going to say that
Hmm.
like I didn't even want to be here anyway.
Correct.
And it's like, okay, and then what? What do you think would happen?
Hmm.
Well, then I would have to. I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess I would know everything, and we could do something about it. Okay. So then, like, then what would happen?
Hmm.
Right? So if we visualize the
Yeah.
vulnerability, you quickly notice that the stuff, like the vulnerability, becomes
Hmm.
this thing that blocks all of our vision because
Yeah.
like that's all we're seeing.
Hmm.
And so then whenever we like go and look at it, we're like, well, yeah, because then it's like, oh.
Yeah. What a great explanation. What a great explanation. Thank you. So, Thomas, my last question for you. If there's one mindset shift that could make a big difference in a leader's journey, what do you think it could be?
Uh, I think I feel like this is like the exclamation point on the entire thing. But it's like, have you tried curiosity?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? That's it. Like, please try it.
Very interesting. And on that note, and your words of wisdom on the try curiosity, which is very critical for leaders because a lot of leaders do tend to believe I know it all. Thank you, Thomas, for speaking to me about your own journey as a founder. I think we covered some fascinating ground on your exits and then on leadership. I mean, you spoke to me about self-healing leadership, on the power of one-on-one meetings. You spoke to me about mindfulness and emotional intelligence, about being able to handle past failures, about imposter syndrome, and of course, about handling vulnerability. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.